Wild stuff happened yesterday with the balanced data slate. Now it is time for us all to go ahead and absorb all that information, and we got to figure out what is the new meta. Because with all this information, you're going to see different armies in different lists at tournaments, and you're going to have to be able to solve new problems in the new version of Warhammer 40,000. So that's what I did for you today. I went ahead and gathered some of the top armies that you're going to see. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. One of the really cool things is the game is actually really balanced right now. So you're going to see a bunch of different threats you're going to prepare for. So if I leave your army off of this list, it's not because I hate you. It's not because I think your army sucks. No, there's a lot of threats. I'm just going to go ahead and put the most obvious ones out there and the ones that we're going to have to solve, because there are some very specific problems that we'll have to solve that will apply to each one of the top armies. So that's what we're doing here today, okay? So basically, when it comes to the top armies and when it comes to the balanced data slate, these were the big changes that happened. I'm not going to talk about points to all those things. You guys could watch my review video if you want all the details. This is just leading us into why we need to counter the armies we're going to need to counter that I'm going to present in this video. So first off, Tau got a huge buff. They got a new army rule where basically they're no longer going to be punished for split firing. Good. That was a really weird thing. And observer units, it's just functioning much better now. So basically now they're just going to point at a unit, and everyone who wants to shoot at the unit they point at is now counted as being spotted. Much better. Necrons and Blood Angels both got huge points reductions. This is okay. This was unexpected. This was really good. Blood Angels needed some points reductions. They got a excuse me. They got a lot more than I expected for them to get. So that was, darn, swallowed some spit. So this was a very unexpected thing. Necrons getting the point reductions they got kind of blew my mind a little bit, but it is what it is. It's okay. Marneus, Calgar, and Guilliman are no longer starting the army with 20 million CP. It just no longer works that way. Now Marneus, he only generates CP if he's your warlord, which means it's going to be really hard to have him and Guilliman in the same list. And then Guilliman, his free CP ability only functions once per battle round, not once per turn anymore. As a matter of fact, that is one of the big changes for the entire balanced data slate, and it's really the only actual rule change we saw that was fairly consistent throughout the balanced data slate. Was that now your once per turn free CP abilities have all been changed to once per battle round free CP abilities, which, in my opinion, is a darn good change. It's always weird to be able to play against an army when they functionally have like 20 plus command points, which is bizarre, and I don't like it. So I think it's a pretty solid change. Emperor's Children also got punched down into the dirt. That doesn't mean that they're actually destroyed. They're not. I actually think they're still pretty darn good, but they did lose a significant amount of points on some of their armies. Like a lot of their armies lost roughly 100 points, which is kind of a big deal. And then Sisters got a big buff, so Sisters might be coming back. So now let's go ahead and talk about the actual armies that are the big problems and what we're going to have to solve here. All right. Army number one, we have the Death Guard. I'm kind of blown away that Death Guard didn't get any nerfs, any changes at all in the data slate. The only thing they got was in their errata. Now, you can no longer rapid ingress 6 inches away with Death Shroud Terminators. Okay, that functionally changes almost nothing. Besides that, Death Guard went through this unscathed, and they are like just so clearly above and beyond every other army in the game right now. This kind of blows my mind. But don't worry, guys. Games Workshop still did a 2-week emergency data patch for the Mordaka, but didn't touch this. Anyway, I'm not salty. Let's carry on. So they are very strong. There are ways to play around them. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. Like you can play around Death Guard. It's just they're just the cheapest and strongest hitting army in the game right now. The big threats that you gotta understand is that now they've got these flat 4 wound infantries that all have the 4 invulnerable saves that have these 6-inch deep strike charges. That is very powerful. They have extremely powerful indirect that's going to be shooting into you, and it's not hard for them to proc their army rule wherever they want. Their army rule says that if you're within 3, 6, or 9 inches of their units, depending on the battle round, then you're going to be -1 to your toughness, and in addition to that, you'll be either -1 to your save, you'll be -1 to hits, or you'll be like -2 to your OC or something, and leadership, I think it is. So it's used to be actually kind of hard to get things in the contagion range. Like you had to be basically up in their grill. No longer, because Plague Marines can give it at range. There are a lot of times, like if you're playing Mortarian Terramahera, you can just give 2 units contagion range. Like it's just much easier to get contagion range. Not to mention they now have infiltration on their Poxwalkers, which means it's very easy for them to get up in your grill and start proccing that contagion range very early. So the thing that you really got to understand is Death Guard are going to be able to use their abilities on you whenever they want. They also have very good damage 3 long range shooting, and That's more or less the whole story that you're going to get. So we're looking at extremely elite flat 4 wound infantry, the 4 invulnerable save that get a 6-inch deep strike. We've got infiltrators to actually proc all their army rolls, and very cheap and very useful infiltrators at that. Powerful indirect and great D3 long range shootings with that 6-inch deep strike charge. Don't forget about the 6-inch deep strike charge. So one of the things you're going to need to start really considering is how do you bring those 12-inch deep strike denial bubbles again. All right, army number 2, Chaos Demons. Chaos Demons made out like freaking bandits in this detachment, in this balanced status slate. They basically lost nothing. I think the only thing that they got nerfed were some of the enhancements in the Shadow Legion, which, good, those enhancements need to be nerfed. I've been playing with them, and they've been way too strong. But they got a massive buff in the form of Nurglings. Nurglings now have a 5-up invulnerable save where they previously had a 6-up invulnerable save. This is a huge increase in their durability, and it's going to make for some very, very toxic 36+ Nurgling list. That's just going to be bodies that are almost impossible to chew through. And don't forget that these Nurglings, flat 4 wounds, by the way, that keeps coming up. These bad boys are also battle line, so in Chaos Demons, when they pass the battle shock test while they're in the Shadows of Chaos, you get to regenerate D3 models to the unit. And they also have Infiltrate. Dirt cheap infiltrators. Where did we hear that before? Interesting. Now, another one of the big problems that you're going to see with your Chaos Demons, especially if they're playing, say, Demonic Incursion, is access to these 6-inch deep strikes. Have we heard that before? Interesting. And even in some of the other detachments, you'll have access to uppy downy all over the place. So lots of movement shenanigans. Lots of flat 4 wound infantry-ish models. They're not actually infantry, they're swarms. So they can't move through models. They have that 5-up invulnerable save, down from the 6-up invulnerable save. Tons of infiltrate, tons of all these things. Deep strike, infiltrate. You guys are going to hear me repeat deep strike and infiltrate all the time, because these are the things that some of the best armies in the game are going to be spamming, and you have to be able to deal with them. Let's look at army number 3, which is a little different. Army number 3, in my opinion, is going to be the Blood Angels. So the Blood Angels got a very, very big boost, and I don't necessarily think Blood Angels are going to be one of the best army out there, but you are going to see them all over the place because people love Blood Angels, and to be honest with you, they're pretty freaking good now. So previously, what we saw a lot with the Blood Angels is that all of their special unique units were all far too expensive, and most of the time it was basically bloodless angels that you would see, which is basically just normal Space Marine models that were in a Blood Angels detachment, but not really the Blood Angels models, because Blood Angels models were all overpriced. Well, they're no longer overpriced. I would argue in some instances they might be a little underpriced now. So a 3-man squad of Sanguinary Guard at 110 is too cheap. They probably should have been that 120. 130 was too much, so I think 120 is probably the sweet spot for them. The 6-man at 240 is still probably actually a little expensive, but it's doable. It's no longer the 260 that it was. So that's probably actually pretty reasonable. So anyway, Sanguinary Guard, you're going to start seeing these guys spammed, especially the detachments that really like the 3-man squad, such as your Angelic Inheritors. So you're going to see them all over the place. They also get points drops on your Death Company Marines with jump packs. Not significant enough to make me actually consider bringing them, but maybe someone out there will consider bringing them. But what really happened is all their characters went down. Mephiston went down by 15 points, which kind of blew my mind. You had Dante went down by 10 points, which kind of blew my mind. You had their Ball Predators went down by 10 points, which also kind of blew my mind. So there were a lot of point reductions. Basically, a lot of the old Blood Angel lists that you were seeing are now just going to have an entire extra unit in them, which could be a critical difference in their ability to push in. So what you have to look for these armies is you're going to need to be understanding that there will be a lot of 12-inch movement infantry that hit very hard in melee. A lot of these infantry will be Sanguinary Guard, which are 3 wound, 2-up armor save, 4-up invulnerable save infantry. Interesting, have we heard about some relatively durable, melee infantry previously in this list? Kind of, haven't we? So one of the things you have to understand about specifically with your Blood Angels is screens will be critical. I highly recommend that you have trash in your armies to be able to start trading. What you really want to do is you want to force their Sanguinary Guard to go into your trash. You don't want to allow their Sanguinary Guard to go into your critical units. So you need to have both little trash units that your opponent can waste their good units into, so that then you can pick them up with your shooting and all that. Now, interestingly enough, I actually forgot to type it here, so let me type it in front of you. They also have access to the Sanguinor. Sanguinor. How do you handle the Sanguinor? Well, the way you handle the Sanguinor is that you have a deep strike denial bubble, because he cannot come in from reserves if you have a 12-inch no reserves bubble. So what are we hearing here? Well, listen, infiltrators are critically important. These elite style infantry, or I know Nurglings aren't infantry, but there's just so many of them with a 5-up invulnerable save with flat 4 wounds. It's a different profile than going into normal infantry is. So your elite style infantry, Death Shroud, Sanguinary Guard. Yeah, I know Nurglings aren't technically infantry, but just bear with me for it. then we're going to have lots of deep strike shenanigans. So we need to have infiltration blocks. So if that's going to be a 12-inch deep strike denial bubble that you can get from Infiltrators for Space Marines, or even the Night Tyrant, I mean, which maybe in the Codex, the Night Tyrant, because if you guys haven't seen that data sheet, oh my gosh, it's sick now. It might not be good in Index, but in the Codex, it's going to be great. So if you're looking at any enhancements in your armies that can give you access to this 12-inch deep strike denial, I would highly start recommending this. And then lastly, the last army that I think we really need to be aware of is going to be Necrons. So Necrons, you've got Wraiths and Technomancers are back to being dirt freaking cheap. A Technomancer plus Wraiths is going to be 300 points. So you can get 18 Wraiths with 3 Technomancers for 900 points. And back it up with just amazing normal Necron good stuff, that's a big problem. If you don't understand why that's a big problem, well, let me break it down for you. Wraiths have 4 wounds each with a 4-up invulnerable save, and they're going to have a 5-up Feel No Pain on top of that when they're led by a Technomancer. Run this in Canoptic Court, they're also pretty much always going to have full rerolls to hit. If you're running it into Awaken, they're going to be hitting on 3s. If you run it in Star Shatter, they're also going to be hitting on 3s most of the time. So basically, these things get turbo buffed in more or less every single detachment, and they're almost impossible to chew through in solo activations. As a matter of fact, I cannot for the life of me think of any unit in the game that can just one-tap a unit of Wraiths. I'm not saying it is technically impossible. I'm sure there's someone out there that can do it, but I can't figure out what can do it. These things are extremely durable, and you proc resurrection protocols on them. And in each detachment, you've got an ability, you've got some way to utilize resurrection protocols outside of just your command phase. So it's very easy to get these guys to resurrect twice in a turn. So you can go from 1 Wraith to 4 Wraiths very, very quickly. So if you don't wipe these units, they just regenerate, which is a huge problem for a lot of people. This is going to be a big issue in the meta. If you can't deal with 6-man squads of Wraiths, you're going to be in trouble. And what is a Wraith? Well, a Wraith is effectively an infantry. I know it can fly. It's technically a beast, but just think of it as an elite infantry with 4 wounds, a 4-up invulnerable save, and a 5 Feel No Pain. So once again, what are we really, really looking at as the problems in this meta? Oh, geez, I forgot to hit my little thing here. 2 seconds. There we go. So basically, what does this mean? Right now, in the current meta, if you're playing Warhammer 40,000, you are a lunatic if you're not bringing infiltrators, because people are going to have a lot. Oh yeah, also in Canoptic Court, those Wraiths can have infiltrate. Just saying. So if you do not have some form of infiltrating unit to either block where your opponent's pre-game moves can go, or block where your opponent can put their infiltrators, you're going to be in for a bad time, because basically every single army is going to be spamming these things. Maybe if you're playing teams exclusively, you won't see the same thing, but I'm probably not talking to you if you're playing teams exclusively. I'm basically talking to people who play singles here. So I highly recommend you start really strongly considering some form of infiltrating unit in your army. If you're not bringing it, I think you're a psychopath. Maybe you're a psychopath, but I still love you. It's okay. Then you will need ways to deal with elite infantry. If you are teched for anti-monster vehicle and you're teched for hordes, but you're not teched for elite infantry, you are in trouble in this current meta. You've got Death Shroud Terminators with a 6-inch deep strike, right? So you need to be able to block their deep strike, and you also have to be able to deal with high toughness, 2-up armor save, 4-up invulnerable, 4-wound infantry. Sanguinary Guard coming out. These bad boys are 2-up armor save with a 4-up invulnerable. They're 3-wound infantry, but they hit like crazy melee, and they move 12 base. So you still have to be able to handle those elite infantry. Wraiths. I know that they also move further, and they're not technically infantry, they're a beast. Who really cares? They do get the infantry keyword when they're led by the Technomancer. These guys are T6, 4-up invulnerable save, 4 wounds with a 5-up Feel No Pain. You're seeing a theme here. You have to be able to handle those elite infantry style profiles. It doesn't matter if they're beast or swarms. It's the same story. You're going to see tons of infiltrators. You're going to see tons of these elite style infantry. And deep strike denial abilities, I think you have to have access to some deep strike denial. Whether you're playing against Blood Angels and you don't want that Sanguinary coming in and just ruining your game plans. Whether you're playing against the Death Guard and you just cannot afford to have those Death Shroud Terminators come in and grab a 6-inch deep strike charge. Whether you're playing against Grey Knights with their 6-inch deep strike charge. Whether you're playing against the new Thousand Suns and they have access to 6-inch deep strikes, not with the charge, but 6-inch deep strikes. There are just so many things in the game right now, which is putting a lot of pressure with these 6-inch deep strikes. Inceptors, T-Suns also can 6-inch deep strike their freaking Scarab Occult Terminators. Also, most of you might not know this yet, but in the Rubrics attachment for T-Suns, you can infiltrate Scarab Occult Terminators. So there are some very, very scary and brutal infiltration units out there that you probably want to be blocking the deployment for with your own infiltrating units. So this is where I'm really starting to look at in the new meta. Now, we need a lot of information. We need a lot of feedback from games that we're going to see in tournaments. But for right now, if you follow these guidelines, you're going to be at least 80% happy, okay? So get some infiltrating units, figure out how to deal with your elite infantry, And for the love of all things holy, please, if you can, if you have the ability to, include some 12-inch deep strike denial bubbles in your army. With that, I'm going to pass the torch for today, and I hope you all have an amazing freaking day. Until next time, crump on. Bye-bye.